Okay, so welcome to APA and welcome to Dave, Sleet and myself. Here we're going to show you how to do a breathing technique in the correct way. This is the most authentic way of calming yourself down in relation to any form of anxiety. So I'm going to ask David simply to breathe for 1 minute. I'm going to time his breathing. I do not want him to try and control his breathing. I don't want him to try and change it, slow it down. I just want him to count his breathing. Inhale and exhale counts as one breath. David, I'm going to time you for that 1 minute. And if you could tell me exactly how many breaths you've taken at the end of that 1 minute. Are you ready?
As I'll ever be. Let's do this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and go. Now, the reason we do this is because when we feel anxious, the oxygen into our system that we're going to bring in through deep breathing will automatically calm your body physiologically. By counting your breaths, it will diversify your mind from the situations that are causing you anxiety, the thoughts that are causing you anxiety, to actually take a break from that and focus on your deep breathing. The two work together to create absolute calm in an individual. This doesn't mean that it fixes anxiety. It means that it gives you control over how you're reacting to that anxiety. And the most important thing is focusing on having that anxiety processed, as in the origins of where it has come from, to help you learn not just to control it with a breathing technique, but also to help resolve so that you're not dependent on a breathing technique each time you need to. So I'm going to stop you there. David, how many breaths have you taken?
18.
Okay, so David's taken 18 breaths a minute, and I'm going to help David work down to 4 breaths in 1 minute. So David, I'm going to show you exactly what I would like you to do. I'm going to reset the phone, restart the minute, and record you again doing exactly what I do. Okay, are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you breathe in deeply as much as you can, either through your nose or through your mouth. Bear with me for 1 moment. I'll show you how to do it, and then I'm going to ask you to copy. Okay? I don't need another breath straight away. I'm listening to my lungs. I'm listening to when I actually need that next breath.
So taking full capacity, holding and releasing as slowly as possible before taking the next one back in, right?
Absolutely. I will be watching you when I retime you to make sure that you do not go into the next breath too quickly, because if you go into the next breath too quickly, you will get lightheaded with too much oxygen in your system. So I'm going to retime you now.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to copy exactly what I have shown you to do. So are you ready?
Let's go.
Okay. I am aware that you have a chest condition, fully aware of that. I will take that into account, just that you're aware that I know exactly what the situation is.
Okay.
Ready? So big deep breath through your nose or your mouth, whichever makes you feel comfortable. Hold and extremely slowly release and let go, and feel for when you need the next one.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And go. Excellent, excellent. Really well done on that. Hold it and then incredibly slowly release when you're ready. Slowly release. Slowly release. You're doing ridiculously well. When you're ready, David, how do you feel?
Partway through and in.
Okay, my apologies, because it's not easy to see when you're halfway through, but I will say to you, you've got it down to 2.5 breaths in that 1 minute from 18.
And it feels very, very focused. It feels like nothing else can actually impede in that minute. It does put a kind of shield around everything. Has to be focused on that. And you know, if you were kind of asking me questions and stuff, I wouldn't have been able to kind of do anything. It had to be focused on that.
Right. So what's it like going from 18 to 2.5? Just that achievement in itself.
It is remarkable to know what that kind of level of control gives you. But you know, as you know, breathing is something that I'm fully aware of the power of, but demonstrating it is something very, very different. And being able to kind of showcase that control factor, if you like, you wouldn't be able to hold an anxiety moment once you can focus on that.
And that's the point. The idea is learning to recognize and feel anxiety rising, feeling anger rising, whichever it is that's causing discomfort, to be able to train your mind to literally go, event, I recognize that actually I feel anxious. So you're recognizing the feeling of anxiety in that moment. But I've got my breathing, I can go straight into my deep breathing and I can calm myself down. In which case, that's the thought process that follows that feeling. On following that, by reacting, by going straight into your deep breathing, it takes your mind away from the original situation that's causing any anxiety into you taking control of the situation, doing that deep breathing, calming your body and your mind completely down, and then allowing yourself to take pride in the fact that you can control your reactions to yourself. So it turns into a response rather than a reaction. Now, often I'll say to people that if they haven't got that availability to themselves in that moment to go to a bathroom at work and just take a couple of minutes in a bathroom and do deep breathing in the way that you've just shown, it can be done. It's also about taking one big deep breath. And honestly and truthfully, whenever I'm in the car, I work at, in other words, I calm my mood and my temper when somebody has just got across me or done something really dangerous in the car to make myself calm down. Classic incident of that was yesterday, having a near-on, full-on major collision in the middle of by pure chance, in the middle of a major police chase with a car. And when the police had gone, which everybody was flying around like crazy, but the person that had stolen the car or was running from the police, when he missed me, which I can genuinely say was, I don't actually know how this man missed me. I know that I unconsciously, because I'm so trained to do this, went straight into, that was lucky. So rather than go down the route of shock, anxiety, oh my God, what could have happened? Where could that have played out? In that one moment, I'm able to collect myself really quickly, still stay behind the wheel of the car and carry on. And if you like, allow yourself to process that mini tiny shock of seeing what could happen if I hadn't moved my car by an absolute foot to get out of the way of that particular driver that was flying at 60 miles an hour down a side street, chased by the police. So a really good example of the importance of even having one big deep breath in a moment, which shuts your brain off from absolutely everything else, but shoves in that bit of oxygen. In the days of old with paramedics, what they used to do is they'd say to somebody, breathe into a brown paper bag. Now, the reason that they do that is because they haven't got the time to do what we're doing here. You know, and it's usually an emergency, it's usually a crisis situation, but even to diversify somebody away from physical pain, which is causing them major anxiety, refocusing them into breathing into that brown paper bag is a diversion away from everything else that's going on. So it's a shift of the focus as well as the oxygen, creating what we call a psychosomatic impact, which creates the calm. Yeah. And that's how powerful oxygen actually is.
And for those that are going to try this, I suppose the best advice is don't do it on your own. You know, this is something that getting used to controlling airflow is something that takes practice. This isn't going to happen the next time someone's feeling anxious. This is something to do when you are in a calm state to get that pattern worked out, so you know that when you are in that uncalm situation, this will work for you, this will slow things down.
Yes, it is important to do it with somebody, because often what you see as an example, I'm going to show a deep breath, what a lot of people do without focusing and understanding exactly what to do. They tend to do this. So they almost get partly through the exhale and then slump and let the rest out. The most important thing is to let that exhale come out as controlled and as slowly until you've released the whole amount of oxygen from your system and feel for the next time you need it. It is important that this is taught by a professional, because it's too easy to go into the next breath too quickly. Unless, if you'd have gone into the next breath too quickly, I would have interrupted you, I would have stopped you, and I would have asked you to go back to one, and I would have started again. So it's actually incredibly important to practice what David has done in the way that you've done it, David, and copy the way that I'm showing it, because it does work. You will find most people will do it for 1 minute, and when they've done it the second minute, so the first minute is really finding out where your stress levels actually sit, and that's very much based on your breathing. The second level is bringing it right down. What's interesting is when somebody at the end of that suddenly starts yawning, which is incredibly common because their body is suddenly going, whew, and I can let it all out now, and I realize that actually I'm quite tired. So the oxygen literally provokes an element of tiredness, but the idea of that is to appreciate that you might actually be tired and you might actually need to get some rest.
The other thing I suppose to bear in mind is when you're using this breathing technique, you're using the majority of your lungs capacity, which we don't normally do in day-to-day kind of everyday run, where we're using a proportion, but with this we're using near enough all of our lung until we actually got really practiced at this and being able to do that. And that inflow of oxygen into parts of the lungs that we don't normally feel completely will kind of, when you stop the exercise, the lungs are going, hold on, I need more. You need to give me that air back, which is that draw of what we know as a yawn, but it's the body saying, hold on, you've given me some, I need some more now, please, as well.
It is one of the most powerful techniques, and the reason I do it in this way is because I've seen there's multiple apps out there that do breathing techniques, but part of what they do is say, breathe in 5, breathe out 8, breathe in 6, breathe out 8. And that's great, because that's getting somebody to try and be aware of how slowly to go. Problem is, put somebody in a crisis state of anxiety, hanging on to, I've got to breathe in 5, I've got to breathe in 8, or whichever way around it is, actually can create more anxiety, because that person is in a moment of absolute crisis. To hang on to digits in their head is so totally unnecessary, because actually just focusing on the oxygen coming in and focusing on that controlled exhale is the most important part of this. And you're right, David, it is so important to do this with somebody. So I always will sit and work with clients and ask them to simply give me what you gave me the first time. I'll time them for that 1 minute. They will count their inhale and exhale as one breath, and they will count how many they're breathing. And that tells me whether or not they're in a state of stress. We all go through states of stress. There's nothing wrong with somebody being stressed. There's something happening to impact on that person to create that stress. It's a human response.
And that baseline measure, for me, 18, I know when we've done these exercises before, it's been higher than that, it's been lower than that. That baseline will vary based on all of the variants that you're experiencing at any one time, isn't that right?
Absolutely, but by bringing yourself to a trained place of being able to breathe slowly, the more you practice breathing slowly, ironically, your body falls into that pattern of breathing. So you turn into somebody that has the capacity to be relatively calm the majority of the time, simply because you're retraining your body to breathe slowly, but breathe sufficiently to allow yourself to have enough oxygen. So for example, if I have somebody that comes in and their breathing might be at 30, 35 breaths a minute, that's extreme stress. In which case, as a therapist, one, I would run through this technique with them. Secondly, it's important to acknowledge their achievement at reducing their breathing from 36 to usually about 4. 4, you did incredibly well to get it down to where you did. Most people, 4 is round about the right amount for each minute. But then what I would do is I would ask them to practice this 5 times a day for 2 minutes, bare minimum each time. Now, the reason I'm doing that with them and asking them to do that for themselves is it's training themselves to go straight to something that is completely natural, something completely within their own control, and disciplining their mind to be able to go, feeling anxious, I've got my breathing, I'm going to go straight into my breathing, I'll calm myself down that way and start the deep breathing. So it literally creates an inbuilt pattern.
Yeah. And to anyone starting this and watching this as a first kind of step, it does feel very alien to count your breaths. It does feel alien to be focusing on something that is so innately organic. It's an unconscious physical reaction is to breathe. It is for the majority of people, it's something that they've been doing all of their life. Why would you spend time focusing on it? But in the very essence of your learning to use that tool that our body has given us in controlling airflow is a skill set like learning the difference between walking and running, and running professionally. Everyone can walk, everyone can run, but not everyone can go on a track and run at speed. You still have to learn how to do that. And this is another one of those skill sets that you can use what your body does organically to actually help you in those situations.
And obviously it's important to point out not everybody can run. I'm
using the analogy of this is something that for the vast majority of people we learn how to walk, we learn how to run. Learning how to develop that so we can use it is uncomfortable. It does take time, and this is another skill set that allows us to use our own inner capacity in order to help us when we need it. And it's a phenomenal tool.
It is, and what it also does is increase somebody's confidence because they have controlled themselves. They haven't relied on medication to be calm. They haven't relied on anybody in that moment at all. They are completely self-reliant. Yes, it's a taught technique. That's appropriate to do it that way. But actually being completely self-reliant and completely in control of your own reaction to anxiety, and by being able to manage that, increases somebody's confidence organically. So even if they have a condition of anxiety, they know if they use this technique that while they're working through, for example, in therapy, where the origins of that anxiety have arisen from, and process what has happened to them to create that, in between appointments, they've also got a technique that is strictly for them, strictly at their disposal, doesn't cost them anything, apart from paying attention to their body, paying attention for their mind, and being able to control themselves. And for me, that's what this technique ultimately is about, creating complete independence and autonomy at being able to manage how you feel. It's so important that people understand that it's not about fixing something, it's about managing a crisis situation in that moment, or simply feeling really anxious over something. So people that overthink comes from a place of anxiety. By stopping themselves overthinking, they can do the deep breathing, calm themselves down, think, right, I've got 10 things I need to think about. Because once they've calmed down, they can then, if you like, write a list of those 10 things rather than spinning in their head, trying to resolve all 10 things in one go, which is too overwhelming for the mind to be able to do.
Before we close and move on to some of the other things that we're going to look at, when should this be used, and should this be used with children?
I would absolutely endorse, because it's bonding as well. So if you have a parent that's doing deep breathing with a child who will copy you, because that's what children do, that's how they develop. They develop by copying somebody around them. Now, how that copying plays out is anybody's guess, and I'm not going to go there at this moment in time. But ultimately, if you just think about a little child being paid ultimate attention and focus on in that moment, and if you like, let's just make it, as you're a male, let's just make it daddy sitting with little girl, little boy, doesn't really matter about the gender, and actually working together to breathe. And that, by instilling that as early as you possibly can in a child, it's a remarkable thing to give to a child, because it's a technique that somewhere down the line could actually, believe it or not, save their life. And I say that because this can stop somebody taking their life. That's how big this particular technique can help somebody, depending on the situation and context. But absolutely endorse younger children doing this.
So as a pre-crisis resilience tool that any of us can carry around, this is a phenomenal piece of knowledge. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for letting me be the guinea pig on this one. And I hope that anyone that's watched this is able to take the full benefit. If anyone's got any questions around the breathing technique or any of the other tips and tricks that Vonnie's put together, then by all means, get in touch. The website is up there, it's over there, and you can ask questions, get to get to see some of the other tips and tricks on the YouTube channel as well. But for now, Bonnie, thank you so much. And for everyone else, take care for now.
Thank you very much, David. Take care.